Well, hey guys, welcome back to Since You Asked. So glad that you're joining us today. We've got another great episode here alongside Alex Foltz. We are excited to answer your questions. Many of you have been sending those in, and we're so thrilled for that. We are thankful that you've taken the time to ask those questions, and we're going to do our best to answer those as biblically and appropriately as possible. But as you know, we've got to be fueled up before we answer those questions.
That's right.
And so here on Since You Asked, our thing is we review the coffees that you want to know about. And so today we've got really a blend that needs no introduction.
Right. I mean,
that needs no introduction.
The people have been asking about it.
They have
That's
been.
probably the number one question we get is, when are you going to review some more Squirrelly Joes?
Yes, it's been a few episodes for us.
It has.
So today I am concerned about this. Any of you who are fans of the show know that my bread and butter when it comes to the coffee world is dark roast and the occasional medium roast. Light roast, not my thing. And so this will be a true testament to the grandeur that is Squirrely Joe's.
Yeah.
If they can do an appropriate light roast that is to my liking, I think that's a sign of a great coffee brand.
Yeah.
So,
And I will say I'm similar to you. I'm more of a medium roast guy.
Okay.
But if I am going to stray out of that, it's more likely going to be a dark roast.
yes.
And so light roast isn't my cup of tea, if you will.
Nice.
But I've indulged in a light roast or two on occasion. So we'll see how this goes. I will say we almost have not done Squirrely Joe's justice. And we will not be influenced by this fact, but this was sent in to us by, I'm not sure if it came from the Squirrels or Joe himself. One of them sent us a couple bags a while ago.
Yeah.
And there's no roast date, to my knowledge, on this.
Okay.
But we got these back, I think, in like July.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So it's been a few months since they've been roasted. But the great thing about getting locally roasted coffee, even if this has been sitting around for 3-4 months, it's still going to be more freshly roasted than whatever you're going to pick up off the shelves at the store.
Yep.
So with that said, we're going to give another Squirrely Joe's a try.
Yep.
Respect blend. It's Brazilian,
Oh,
single origin.
okay.
So that, that's always.
I'm assuming I'm a coffee guy, but I don't know that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm assuming that means it comes from one place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, this is the Fazenda Farms. It even has
That's cool.
the origin listed.
Okay.
And so it is a coffee from Brazil, from that specific farm. And so, and then brought up here to Olney, Illinois, and roasted just for us and for you, the consumers.
We do this for you. So,
yes, we do.
And us.
Yeah.
But, all right. One sip. Everybody knows the rules. Squirrely Joe's. Respect roast. Yeah. That's good.
It's not like what you'd expect from a light roast, I think.
No.
If you're not a light roast person.
I expect to see through my cup with a light roast.
No. Yeah.
It's fuller bodied, I guess, than a normal light roast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of light roasts you make, and they do look almost like a darker tea.
Yes.
This looks like coffee.
Yeah.
So that's, but yeah,
It's good. It's good coffee.
It is. There's a bit of a brightness to it. Good body. Yeah. I would drink this more regularly.
Yeah.
If light roast tastes more like this,
Yes.
I would drink them.
Yep. Okay. Moment of truth. And I got myself into some conundrums a few episodes ago with my ratings. I am going to, keeping in mind, light roast just isn't my personal preference. Doesn't mean that's not a good light roast. Probably the best light roast I've had. 6.2.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking 6.5.
Okay.
And that shows I'm a little bit more of a light roast fan than you are, so my score's a little bit higher. Squirrely Joe's 8.1, 8.4. So
Yeah. Those are just so good.
yeah,
And I mean, this is good for a light roast.
It
I'm
is.
just not my personal preference. But if you love light roast, I think you will love this. So that's not a knock on the brand itself.
no, not at all. Yeah, and that's definitely it's a 6.4 composite.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely the lowest that we've given a Squirrelly Joe's coffee.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
8.1 for the wisdom blend, 8.1 for kindness on the composite.
Those are it's just hard to beat those two.
Yeah, but again, we're showing our bias.
Yep.
We're a bigger fan of the darker roasts.
Yeah.
So this one really good. If you're a light roast fan, I think the Squirrelly Joe's brand and quality has shown through in our reviews.
Yep.
And if you say, hey, I find myself being more of a light roast fan, this is going to be what you want to pick
Check it
up.
out.
Yeah. So, okay. 6.4 composite for Squirrelly Joe's Respect Blend.
Yep. Where does that put us with that?
That's similar to Sunrise Coffee Collective, Pete's Big Bang.
Okay.
Higher than Door County Dark Roast. Definitely higher than our Kopi Luwak. Similar to the Zavita Hazelnut Vanilla blend. So,
okay. Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yes.
I think we gave it a fair review on that. It's a good light roast. It's light roast for people who don't like light roasts.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And, maybe we've not divulged this. In a few episodes, we've got a special episode coming.
Yes.
Something special for the people. And we've got some changes that we're going to be addressing.
Yep.
Maybe our rankings is something that we can put out for the people to
that's a good idea.
keep them updated.
Yeah. We should put those in the show notes every episode. Just here's the running total of where we're at.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So, I
like that.
The people want to know.
They do want to know.
We're here for the people.
Yep.
So
awesome.
Squirrelly Joe's Respect Blend, 6.4 composite. So for a couple of non-light roast drinkers, a good cup of light roast.
Very high light roast score.
Yes.
Nice job, Joe. Cool. So as we have just a seamless segue into today's question, this is one that just a trigger warning.
Well, let me transition this for you.
Okay, go ahead.
What does light and dark
have
to do with one another?
Wow.
Not talking about roasts anymore.
No. That's a great segue. Nice work. We should have talked about this before. But so we're going to talk about kind of a controversial issue in the Christian circle as to an upcoming holiday. So whenever you're watching this, right now it is October 23rd that we're recording this. So we're 8 days away from Halloween. Ooh. And that is a controversial issue amongst many Christians in many different circles, especially if you look at the TikTok Christians or you look at social media. There's a lot of opinions, a lot of videos that come out as to how a Christian should approach this. And so we want to answer the question, how should a Christian respond to Halloween? Let me start with this. We do not think less of you if you take one approach that we're going to talk about, or if you take another. I think there are boundaries that all Christians need to agree on, but there are different allowances, different freedoms to be amongst this spectrum that we're going to talk about today. So while this is a controversial issue, we want to make sure we know, you got to do what's best for your family. Yeah. You got to make that decision. You've got to have a right conscience before God, and you're going to decide what's best. But what we're not going to try to do is shame you one way or another in this. I think there are parameters, and we're going to talk about those. But what you do inside those parameters, I think there's freedom. So I want to start with that caveat. Alex, let's talk about the history behind this, because it does have some different roots that people may not always be aware of. And so why don't you take that? Let's talk about the history of Halloween and how we got to where we are today.
Yeah. So the roots of Halloween kind of date back to around the 1200s BC. So we're talking, over 3,000 years ago. Wow. Okay. It was a Celtic festival, Samhain. Now, you might have seen that word. It's spelled Samhain. So if you see it, you probably think, oh, Sam Hain, which is how I've always pronounced it. But it's pronounced Samhain. It's a Gaelic celebration that would happen at the end of the harvest year and the beginning of winter. Okay. It was symbolic of human death and new beginnings. So the Celts believed that Samhain, which was celebrated from October 31st to November 1st,
Okay.
was the day that spirits returned to Earth. They would wreak havoc and destroy crops.
Oh.
So what they would do is they would light large bonfires on hilltops. They would wear disguises, masks and costumes made out of animal skins and animal heads to scare away ghosts and avoid being recognized by them.
Okay.
Okay. So there you even see some of the traditional bonfires. You see costumes being worn. Fast forward 1,200 years. Now we're in really just a few years after the death and resurrection of Jesus, 43 AD, the Roman Empire, under the rule of Emperor Claudius, conquering new lands and kind of acclimating their traditions into their own.
Yeah.
They incorporated some of the various Celtic traditions into their own Roman festivals and celebrations.
Okay.
The main festival affected was Feralia, an ancient Roman festival honoring the dead, celebrated in late October. Okay. So there you have kind of things merging together.
Yeah.
Some sources will tell you that Pomona, which is the Roman goddess of fruit and trees, was honored with a festival around this time. And that is where we would get tradition like bobbing for apples.
Okay.
That's disputed, but
You are destroying Halloween right now.
that's disputed, but that factors into it.
Okay.
Fast forward another couple hundred years, around the 600s, May 13th, 609, Pope Boniface IV dedicated the Pantheon, the monument in Rome, to all Christian martyrs and established the Roman Catholic feast, All Martyrs' Day.
Okay.
In the 730s, Pope Gregory III moved that date from May 13th to the current November 1st.
Okay.
All Martyrs' Day, November 1st now.
Okay.
And then in the 1260s, Pope Urban IV expanded All Martyrs' Day to become All Saints' Day.
Okay. That's the one I've heard of. Okay.
Yes, not
Gotcha.
just those who have died for their faith, but just all saints in general.
Okay.
So a couple hundred years later, the Catholic Church established All Souls' Day, a day November 2nd to honor the dead, in a supposed attempt to replace the similar Celtic rites, such as the Festivals for the Dead, with a church-sanctioned holiday. So All Souls' Day, again, that's November 2nd, and November 1st, All Hallows is what it's also called, which is where we get All Hallows Eve.
Which would be the day before.
The day before.
Okay.
So then, now that's transitioned into Halloween.
Wow.
Now, moving on to the 1800s and beyond, we get to the Halloween that we know today. Americans have meshed their beliefs and customs with some of the ones from the Native Americans. Halloween began to include things like parties with singing and dancing and storytelling, telling of ghost stories. More modern times, you have Halloween-inspired films and stories. The tradition of putting on a costume and trick-or-treating for candy was originally from this time period where they would go out and ask for either food or money instead of candy, and that's been adopted into candy. So,
Okay.
So there you see over the years how it's adapted, it's changed with the cultures, and there's other cultures that have had similar things that have kind of been grafted in, but
Okay, so here is, in relation to this particular holiday, what I think is important to remember is that Halloween is not the only one that this same type of meshing of cultures and traditions and holidays has taken place.
Yeah.
And probably the low-hanging fruit on this is Christmas.
Yeah.
That was adapted to be a Christian holiday to celebrate the birth of Christ, even though we look back and we can see Jesus probably wasn't born on December 25th. It was probably much earlier in the year. But that was taken, something that was a pagan holiday, and adapted to be a Christian holiday as a way to counteract that pagan ritual, the pagan celebration. So, and Easter is the same thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, we celebrate Christ's resurrection on that, and rightfully so. But that was
the
also,
Easter bunny is not in Scripture.
I don't think.
Okay, I haven't read that part either.
So Second Opinions 12 maybe. But I think it's important for us to understand that it is not just Halloween that this adaptation has taken place with different cultures and different ideologies. We're kind of the result of these melting pots of cultures and people and customs, and you're seeing that all on display here. The reason why I think that's important is because there are some Christians that will not celebrate Christmas because of that.
Yeah.
There are some Christians who will not celebrate Easter because of, and I should have looked this up before, but was it the Roman god of fertility that the egg is supposed to symbolize?
Yeah.
That that's how, I don't know, whatever. But anyway, she was born in an egg or something. I'm butchering that, but the point still stands. And so there are some Christians that will say, because it has pagan roots, we're not going to celebrate that. I think all of that is important to be brought up because it is highlighting something that it is the heart behind the celebration that actually is what we're going to talk about today. So yes, there are pagan roots in Halloween. You laid those out. And there are a lot of different things that we celebrate now, not always even just Halloween, but even fall type stuff too, that have been adapted from that time period and are celebrated now. So let's dive into this then. How should a Christian, knowing the history, knowing the background, how should a Christian respond to Halloween?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think to make a blanket statement over the entirety of it almost does it a disservice. I don't think, even to go beyond Halloween, you mentioned Easter and Christmas, and I don't think that when we're putting out Easter eggs for our kids to hunt for, or when we're trick-or-treating, our kids are saying, doesn't this honor and celebrate the Roman deity? And it's they're completely unaware, just as most of us are.
Yeah.
I mean, we might have a vague understanding, but it's something that over the years, it doesn't mean that anymore.
Right.
But there are elements, especially when you look at Halloween, that I think are unwise for a Christian to celebrate or to partake in.
Yeah.
Scripture talks about divination. It talks about witchcraft, how that is something that we should, not partake in.
Yeah.
And so do I think that if your kid wants to dress up, that they're allowing demons into their lives? No, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Now, and if they're wanting to dress up as a demon, that might be something we want to, we don't want to honor that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We don't want to be a part of that. But when your toddler is saying, I want to be a Paw Patrol character, well, that's demonic.
Yeah.
I don't think that. They're not thinking anything further than other kids are dressing up. I want to dress up and I get candy.
Yeah.
Count me in, right?
There is nothing inherently evil about those things.
Yeah.
Now, let's give the caveat. I think you started on that. We have to be wise in this. So as parents, how are we going to set this scene for our kids? The first thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to act like pagans. I'm not. Yeah. We are believers in Christ, so we're not going to act. We're gonna treat this like a pagan holiday. And so what that means is we're not going to participate in anything that is evil. Like we're not going to be a part of things that celebrate violence or evil spirits, or like we're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
But if my daughters want to dress up as princesses and they want to go to grandma and grandpa's house or go to the church trunk or treat, there's nothing inherently evil about that. So my job as their father and the spiritual leader of my household is to decipher What is God honoring and what is not? Is there inherently evil things about my kids dressing up in good costumes? We're not gonna do anything that celebrates death and all of that. Mm-hmm. But is there anything wrong with them putting on an innocent costume that is modest, that is celebrating good things, and hanging out with their friends at church is where we're going to be? No, I don't think so. And we're going to explain to them, like, I think that's also an important thing. Have those conversations with your kid.
Yeah.
Like, hey, the costumes that we're going to wear, you may have some friends that are in, the Scream mask is always a popular one. And when we put on a church trunk or treat, you see those come through with the community coming out for that. So we're going to talk to our kids. Hey, for us, for our family, we're not going to wear things that celebrate violence or are scary or evil. Like, we're not going to do that. And here's why. But you can celebrate this in an innocent way. And we're confident that we are not opening the door to evil in our family by our kids going and celebrating in this right way and getting candy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to get legalistic about that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you brought the cat out of the bag. Our church is doing a trunk or treat event next week.
Yeah.
And I know there's some people who are going to be like, yeah, a lot of churches do that and that's normal. And other people will say, I cannot believe that a church would do that. And for us, it's, we've had that conversation as the church leadership, and this is something that our community is going to do. We are going to have people in our community who maybe don't have a church home or have no affiliation with church, and they're going to go out and trick or treat.
Yeah.
And we are saying we want this to be an opportunity for us to open our doors to have the community come in a place where they're saying, I don't necessarily want to go to church. Maybe they're saying, I'm not going to show up on a Sunday morning, but we get them here on our church property, and we make them feel welcome. We make them feel loved, and we show them, hey, our church cares about you. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want this to be. It's not a, if you don't come to church here, then you're not welcome. In fact, it's the opposite. Everyone is welcome, whether you go to church here or not.
And we're going to provide a safe, fun, and good environment.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to see any of the leaders that are partaking in this dressed up as something evil or gory or, sexual or whatever. Like, you're not going to see that here. And so we're going to provide a spot for safe, fun enjoyment. And so, I just, let me stop myself, because I think I need to make a caveat here or put something out. If you have decided for your family, we are not going to be a part of this at all because we understand the roots and we just don't want to be associated with that, good for you.
Yeah.
I think here's my problem with this. When people say that a Christian should not have any participation in this at all because of its roots, I think that is a slippery slope that opens you up to a lot of double standards in your life. Now, again, we don't glorify the evil. We don't glorify the violence. We don't glorify the satanic element of it that can exist, but it also can all the other time. And here's what I've heard a lot. Why would you open yourself up to demonic influence? Well, first of all, I think if you look at like 1 Peter 5:8 reminds us that Satan prowls around like a roaring lion seeking to devour. That is not limited to one day, a year.
Yeah.
We often act like this is the day when demons are most active. This is the day when most oppression happens. No, it's all the time. Like it is, Satan has not ramped up his activity on October 31st, and he's going to go easy on you on November 1st. No, he wants to destroy you, regardless of when that is. And so I think it's important for us to understand, like, we've got to be wise and we've got to be aware of the spiritual warfare that we're in every day. Like, you have to realize that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you've also got to understand that Christ has died for us. And so believers that have trusted in him have been, one, saved from the effects of their sin. They have been saved from the wrath of God that has been poured out on Christ now. But also, death is not something we fear. And so in a culture that sometimes glorifies it, and I know it has roots, Halloween has roots in glorifying death and being fearful of that. We're not fearful of that.
Yeah.
We know that Christ has come to give us life. And so he has, in a sense, redeemed that element of it as it pertains to death. Like we don't fear that. We don't glorify it, the goriness and all that stuff. We don't glorify that, but we're free to have joy. We're free to participate in the good and right things, and we also are wise, or should be wise enough to know how to separate those things. Hey, these are the elements that we'll participate in, but anything that doesn't honor God in that, no, we're not going to be a part of that. So I just think it's important for us to not paint it with a broad brush and just say, if you do anything October 31st. How can you call yourself a Christian? I think that's a really, really narrow view of this, and kind of undermining the freedom that Christ has given us to be a part of good and right things.
Yeah, and we brought it up a few weeks ago in one of our episodes. I can't remember which one, but 1 Corinthians 10, all things are permissible for me, but not all things are beneficial. There are elements of Halloween that we should reject, that we should say we don't want anything to do with that. That's not beneficial. But there are, I think, parts of it like trick-or-treating and enjoying getting together with people and enjoying company, having a party. Yep. This is permissible. This is something that we have the freedom to exercise. And you brought up the idea that Satan might be most active on Halloween. I think you could make a strong argument that it's the opposite, because there's so many people well aware of that it would be the day where he would say, well, their guard's already up.
Yeah.
And I think you could also make the argument that, not that we're against some of these things, but like Easter baskets, Christmas presents. He's done a pretty good job of drawing our attention at those holidays away from what's truly important.
That's exactly right.
Again, not that I'm going to get my kids Christmas presents, and we're going to, hunt for Easter eggs because it's just a fun little tradition that kids enjoy. But we are intentional about making sure that this is about Jesus. This is about him coming to earth and being born with a purpose. This is about what that purpose, Easter is being about what that purpose was, his death on the cross and resurrection, conquering of death. We don't want to lose focus on those things. And so I think what it's about is being intentional about what you're allowing your family, yourself, your kids to be a part of.
Absolutely.
Are you just blindly walking through and saying, well, it's Halloween, so we just got to get something and all this, and it's Christmas, so we got to, or are you thinking intentionally about, what does this opportunity present as far as how can I raise my kids to know the Lord better? Does Halloween offer this? And as your kids get older, you can have those conversations. Hey, we don't want to dress up and do some of these things, scream mask or goblins and demons, things. Those are things that we don't want to glorify. It's easier when they're kids. They want to be a princess. They want to be Paw Patrol.
As
they get a little bit older, they want to be a little more.
I want to be edgy.
I don't think they mean to be, but it's just that their interests are no longer innocent, always innocent things. And so, it's just about what are you doing that is intentional. What conversations are you having with your kids?
Can we get practical for a second? I think it'd be important for people to have kind of an inside look at our households. How do you guys approach that? I mean, because you've got older kids than I do. How do you guys approach those conversations? Well,
the last few years with Fall Festival, my daughter, your daughter's in the pageant too. You know what it's like. There's a lot going on right now, and Halloween has almost become an afterthought of, like, oh man, what do you guys want to be? When my kids were younger, my daughter one year was a jellyfish. And it was super cool.
Yeah.
You know, one year she was a spy. She had a trench coat and she wore a hat and had a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
And, you know, because she was really into like Nancy Drew and solving mysteries and stuff. And so, yeah, my kids have been princesses and princes. And one year I think Emerson was the old man from Up when he was when he was like one. Like, needed the walker to hold himself up, and I mean, it was super cool. But yeah, now as they're getting older, we are talking to them about, we're not gonna dress up as things that are those sorts of things. And we're, like you said, it's not just a once a year type of thing. We're pretty intentional about what sort of things we allow them to watch, sort of things we don't. And so our kids are, they're not going to, want to dress up as a demon, or the devil. It's just not something they would ask about. I think ghosts this time of year is one where it almost seems harmless. and well, it's just a ghost. You just, and what kid out there hasn't, especially when you're our age, you forget, or you're like, I don't want to do, you get to that age, you're like, I don't want to do Halloween this year. And then it gets down to it and you're like, I still want the candy and
Mom,
I don't have a costume.
Sheet.
Get me a sheet. We're cutting a hole in it. And so we've been and they seem harmless, but I do think that's where, if you're not intentional about it, you can slip into some areas where maybe you shouldn't. I do think that when we are opening ourselves up to that sort of thing, to ghost stories, to spooky things, we are giving Satan a foothold into our life. I shared with you, but years ago, this is before I really I would call myself a Christian at that time, but I wasn't living it. And I didn't go to church, didn't read my Bible. I wasn't walking with Jesus. But if you asked me if I believed in him, I would have said, yeah. I had a friend and we would go ghost hunting. We would go to these spots that were allegedly haunted and, different graveyards that had haunted things, or, if you go and, on the full moon, go to this grave and there's a girl with a statue of a violin and, you can hear the violin playing and and we heard things. Now, was some of it in our imagination? Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, we went to one spot where, we saw something, a light that shouldn't have been where it was, as it got closer, and there was no one there. And we saw things that I couldn't explain at the time, other than, we saw the ghost, the haunting, whatever it is. Now I look at that and say, man, I was opening my mind to the possibility of those things. And I think Satan was using that to say, I'm going to keep you going down this path. I'm going to keep you distracted by these things. Because really that's all we're doing, is we're saying ghosts exist. Well, that's things that exist outside the, the realm of reality. They live in another reality, kind of like demons and kind of like angels and God and Satan. And so I think Satan was using that to distract me. And so I think that's where we need to be careful. And like I said, it's easy when you're like, let's just throw a sheet on and you can be a ghost for Halloween. Well, why not find something else that's easy to dress up as?
And I think again, it just goes back to, because I know, and my heart kind of goes out to parents that are wondering, because they're hearing all of these things, and they're saying, man, like we believe in Jesus and we're Christians, but we're hearing like all of these different things that say, oh yes, you can, no problems, no strings attached. And then others are like, under no circumstance should you do don't leave the house on Halloween, you know? And it's just, my heart goes out to them, because they're trying to do what is right and what is God honoring. And so they're like, man, if we let Susie be a Princess Peach from Mario, are we opening ourselves up to a portal? And, and I make a joke, but that's not a joking matter. Like, you're trying to do what is right. And so I would just say this, pray about this, ask God, what should we do? We want to honor you above all. We don't want to entertain the idea of glorifying anything that is against you. But also think, here's an important point, that a lot of Halloween is built around fear, that, death and hauntings and ghosts and goblins and demons and all this stuff. I think it's important for us to step back and realize that as compared to Almighty God, those things are not the things to be ultimately feared. The wrath of God is the thing to be terrified of. And so as believers, because you see it, commercials and all this stuff, this fear-driven culture that we've created around Halloween should remind us of the gospel. Like, those are not the ultimate things that should be feared. Are they scary? Yeah, they can be. Mm-hmm. But the wrath of God is even more terrifying. And so it should be a reminder for us, one, that truth, but two, being grateful for the cross, being grateful for Jesus, that he has removed that fear from us, that he has removed the wrath of God, and he has given us the freedom to operate in a way that we believe keeps that right conscience towards God. So as it pertains to Halloween activities or fall harvest or whatever you want to call it, focus on the things that are good and right. And if you choose to participate in those things, know that you have the freedom to do that. If you choose not to, know that you have the freedom to do that too. Mm-hmm. So we want to do the things that are honoring to God. We want to do the things that glorify him and that highlight things that are good and right and are not dark and evil and demonic and scary. Like, we want to reject that stuff. But if we're doing things that keep a clear conscience before God, if you've decided to do that with the freedom of knowing that Jesus has saved you from your sins, that he has removed the penalty of death and his wrath, and have fun mm-hmm. with that in ways that honor him. And so my heart goes out to parents and families that are wrestling through this. I hope that you realize that your first priority is to honor God and to lead your family in that. And whatever decision you make within those parameters, good for you. Do the things that honor him, and whatever you have decided for your family to do that. Enjoy that time or stay away from that. But above all, it should point you to the fact that Jesus has removed the fear of death. Jesus has removed the fear of the wrath of God for those who trust in him. And man, it should be another moment where you are grateful for the gift of grace that God has given us through his son.
Yeah. Excellent. I hope that was beneficial for people. I think the only thing I would want to add, I want to speak directly to the kids that are listening in, and undoubtedly we have dozens of children, thousands probably. It is imperative that your fathers go through your Halloween candy and take out the Reese's cups.
Yes, for your own good.
For your benefit. You need to stay away from the Reese's cups. They need to remove those from your candy bags. I just felt that needed to be said, that the kids needed to hear that.
That may be the highest point of wisdom we've given in this podcast.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird? You got me I'm hungry now. Isn't it weird that something magical happens when those Reese's that are already good, but when they become the form of a pumpkin or a tree or an egg, something magical happens. And I don't know what it is. If it's the concentration of the peanut butter.
When you put it that way, now I'm feeling a little convicted. Maybe there is something magical. Maybe there's a little dark magic happening, because I'm telling you, the Christmas tree, the Easter egg, the pumpkin, the football. Oh my goodness.
The Easter bunny.
Yes.
Which is massive. I mean, it's 12 Reese's cups in one, but I remember as a kid, I'd always get that for Easter, and I would crush half of it.
Why stop at half? I would eat the whole thing.
I would feel guilty, and I'd be like, I need to stop. And then I'd come back like after lunch and devour the rest of it.
Oh my goodness.
Something magical happens. I agree with that. Alex, kids, stay away from that.
Yeah.
Let your fathers take that for you. Mm-hmm. It's part of our duty.
That's right.
And I think we'll all be better for it.
As the protectors of our household.
It's the wise and responsible thing to do.
We need to devour those.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Okay. Well, definitely we've peaked here
Our
at the
finest
Since You
moment here.
Asked
Yes.
podcast.
Yes.
But we really do hope that this conversation has been beneficial for you. I know it has been for us as well, as we seek to navigate as Christians. What do we do with this Halloween season? And I think what it comes down to is pray about it. Do what you think is best for your family. There's no judgment if you say it's not something we're going to partake in. Mm-hmm. There's no judgment if you say, no, we're going to do this in a way that honors God. We're going to, avoid demonic things, but we're going to have fun with the time of year and with some of the traditions that we have.
Yep.
So I want to thank you for joining us at this 18th episode of Since You Asked. Something special coming here in a few weeks. Episode 20. It's going to be a little different.
Different type of
episode.
fun. It's going to be fun.
In the podcast business, we call that a tease.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you come back here in 2 weeks for that one. But if you got any questions you would like us to tackle here on a future episode, we'd love to have that sent in to us. You can email us at question@redbrushcc.org. We will answer a question on a future episode that we've got. Of course, we'd love your coffee suggestions as well. And most importantly, any feedback, any reviews that you could give us, share this on social media, leave us a like and a review. That really helps get the podcast, the message out to more people to where they can enjoy it. And hopefully, most of all, we hope that God is honored and glorified through our conversations, through the questions that we're answering. And so we'd love to have more people come to know and to hear about the hope of Jesus through what the conversations we're having. So until next time, this has been, I'm Alex, and thanks for joining us.